Hello and welcome back to Just Good Game News, your place for positive things going on in the gaming industry. Thank you so much if you have voted in the Just Good Game Awards. I have now wrapped the voting on that thing, and so please look forward to the end of December when we'll have a two-part Just Good Game Awards show going out. Part 1 will be the community half, that's everything that you got to vote on, and Part 2 will be all my custom awards and a few other topics that I want to talk about in regards to wrapping up the year as well. So like I said, please look forward to that. For now, we have a ton of awesome things to get stuck into, because while the weather outside might be frightful, the Just Good Game News is delightful. First up, we've got to talk about Jeff Keighley's statue. Like, what the amount of weird back and forth with this thing, where, if you don't know, there was Jeff Keighley tweeted out 3 words on his X profile, which led people to realize there was an actual physical statue set up in the Mojave Desert. What game could it possibly be teasing for the Video Game Awards? Jez Corden from Windows Central just straight up said it was Diablo 4 in response to someone asking him over on Twitter/X. Jason Schreier from Bloomberg then got out there and said, no, it's not Diablo, but it is a good one. He said he wasn't going to reveal what it actually was. Alongside all of this, a lot of people thought it was God of War. The next God of War installment, there's been an Egyptian installment rumored for quite a while in regards to God of War. Then Cory Barlog himself, creative director on 2018's God of War, was apparently in a live chat for a YouTuber called Luke Stevens, and he said, no, it's not God of War. So we're right back to square one. However, I think I have the answer. I'm crossing the fingers. We'll see. Earlier this year, we got word that Sony Santa Monica were working on a new video game that they said wasn't a new IP, but would feel like one. So I think this is Barlog walking the line right between, okay, this is something potentially set in the God of War universe, potentially an Atreus game or something like that, but it's not God of War, like by name, by branding. It's not God of War, even though it's in this extended universe. That will be my pick. That's my pull. We'll see. I was going to say fingers crossed, but I have no idea what to have fingers crossed for. Just hopefully it's worthwhile. Next up, the former director on the Splinter Cell remake, David Grivell, has rejoined Ubisoft to get the project over the finish line, citing over on his LinkedIn that this is a very special team and project to him. It comes after the Splinter Cell Deathwatch anime on Netflix featuring Liev Schreiber has been received pretty positively, with Ubisoft desperately needing a win overall. I reported like 2 or 3 weeks ago that the existence of another live service first-person shooter battle royale type thing that they've got in the works. So hopefully, David Grivell returning, dude that was initially helming the Splinter Cell remake in the first place, getting him back on board. Hopefully there are enough pieces to just sort of glue together at this stage. The idea of a Splinter Cell remake was mentioned over 2 years ago at this point, and hopefully with the Prince of Persia remake also coming at the beginning of 2026, if the different rumors and leaks are to be believed around that, we can have an Ubisoft that actually gives us just games that are designed to be completed. They don't have infinite recurrent predatory monetization schemes attached to them. The Splinter Cell remake in 2026, as I live and breathe. Next, Red Dead Redemption's free next-gen update is now out. It brings HDR, higher frame rates, and better resolution to all versions of the game, with the Nintendo Switch 2 version being currently singled out as pretty outstanding. This is a super quick thing that I just wanted to throw in, but I feel like Rockstar, although they obviously officially announced that they were going to be doing a proper next-gen update for Red Dead, haven't exactly been singing about it since launch. There's a couple of technical issues going on in regards to different versions of Red Dead, and depending on whether you bought the backwards compatible version over on I had the 360 version, the digital version, upgraded that onto the Xbox, or whether you bought the new gen version that is, the newest version, there are a couple of teething issues in regards to access to the game and whether you have the license for it, with some people reporting that the different storefronts are asking them to buy the game all over again. However, if we focus on the graphics, the capabilities, and what the game is, Red Dead Redemption is one of my absolute favorite games of all time. I prefer it to Red Dead 2. I just think it's a little bit more succinct, and I prefer playing as John Marston overall, but they're both exemplary games and exemplary works of art with incredible teams behind them. I was going to say superhuman feats of coding and art design and just general scope to bring these games together. I kind of want to buy it again. I'm getting through the backlog. The backlog is staring me in the face like the Green Goblin mask, but I would love to go through Red Dead 1 again. Next up, I'm going to throw in some comments from Dan Houser. Speaking of Red Dead, speaking of Rockstar, speaking of Dan Houser, dude's been doing the rounds after 20, 30 years of just staying behind the scenes, turning out some of the greatest games of all time. Dude has now been popping up left, right, and center, doing interviews over on the Lex Friedman podcast, and very recently he was also on Virgin Radio speaking to Chris Evans, talking about implementation of AI in the games industry. He had some rather scathing comments to say, so I thought I'd throw these in. We have the different reports of the likes of EA and Ubisoft forcing their developers developers to use Copilot AIs to bounce ideas off an AI to attempt to refine them. To a lot of people, it's not the death of creativity, but it's a hell of a blow against it as we attempt to hold a shield up like Wonder Woman against all the different barrages of AI. You turn your phone on and Google's like, hey, do you want to use Gemini? No, I don't think anybody does. But still, Dan Houser weighed in on the whole thing. Like I said, speaking over on Virgin Radio, calling the individuals behind these decisions inhumane and not fully rounded humans. He said that AI itself is like mad cow disease. Speaking on Virgin Radio, Houser said some of these people trying to define the future of humanity, creativity, or whatever it is using AI are not the most humane or creative people. Humanity is being pulled in a direction by a certain group of people who maybe aren't fully rounded humans. I think that AI is going to eventually eat itself because as far as I understand it, which is really superficial, the models scour the internet for information, but the internet's going to get more and more full of information made by the models. So it's sort of like when we fed cows with cows and got mad cow disease. Preach, man. Absolutely preached. For me, all of the AI stuff, the general AI conversation just puts the premium on the human. Like, there's a reason that you're listening to me talk about the news, and hopefully you enjoy my opinions, my coverage, whatever the hell it is, rather than some sort of AI-generated, here's what happened this week in the gaming industry. Just good game news. I think that goes across the board. Like, some people to their core would just rather listen to music made by humans, films made by humans, pieces of art generated by humans. I think it's an interesting curio to go down the AI route and go, hey, what does the voice of all data in recorded history think of X thing that I ask it? That's like an interesting proposition on a pure tech level. But I think once it starts stepping into creative realms, things that we, without really speaking it out loud, need that human connection to actually form, which I think is something in the game space that has bubbled over so many times before. We can tell when we have been given corporate slop. We can tell when you're given a forced sequel or, something that has been regurgitated from the past, like something like a Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League. Obviously, Rocksteady are incredibly talented, but there are so many parts of that game's design that feel audience tested half to death, and we see it across the board. It happened with the Avengers game, it happened with Anthem, it happens all the time in the gaming industry. And I feel like gamers, as in regards to a demographic or an audience, someone that is consuming a certain art form, gamers have been on it in terms of pointing this stuff out for over half a decade now, and the AI approach only exasperates the worst parts of that overall approach, that corporate approach, the kind of people that Dan Houser is referring to, who are just the suits, who are just spending their months just jumping between Google Meets every now and then, saying, hey, we should do that because the data says that you should. Screw the creative idea that you thought of. We're going to go with what the test audience data, the most middle ground thing is, because those particular people aren't steering creativity from the ground up in the first place. They're only looking after the numbers. And once you start trying to be creative by numbers, you end up with some of the worst ideas possible. Lastly, in this regard, if you're over on the YouTube, you can watch, I did a video about how console prices are about to skyrocket, specifically because of AI companies hoovering up these specific GPU wafers that are used to store memory. You can go watch that video about how that's eventually going to affect the PlayStation 5, the Xbox systems, consoles in general going into 2026. Lastly, and this is just good game news, but I wanted to throw this in as an overall talking point because it's a bit of a mixed bag. I'm going to go with the positives first. One of my favorite game developers, Yacht Club, they're the dudes that made Shovel Knight, who I absolutely love. If I lean this direction, maybe you can see down there, I've got a collection of Shovel Knight amiibo. I have a ridiculous amount of Shovel Knight stuff. And the good news is that Shovel Knight 3D has apparently been in the works for the last 5 years or so, which is music to my ears. The mixed bag side of this is that as part of the report over on Bloomberg with Yacht Club's founder, Sean Velasco, talking to Jason Schreier, he said that just because of the last 10 years and the way that the studio has handled itself, they're not doing very well. He said that they ostensibly need Mina the Hollower. That's a make or break game. He said that if it does completely flop, they'll still be around, but they will have to find other ways to make money. So I think it's a shame considering the momentum that was behind Shovel Knight, and I hopefully still is, if they ever get around to doing Shovel Knight 3D. But like I said, that's been in development for 5 years. However, because they needed to bring Mina together and really make sure Mina was the thing that blows up, they're saying that something like 200,000 plus units is what they're aiming for at the minimum. They had to pull the Shovel Knight 3D team off working on that game just to get Mina over the finish line, and they're ostensibly putting all of their eggs in the Mina basket. Things not going so well over at the Yacht Club, HQ, but the good side is that they are actually doing Shovel Knight 3D, which is the main thing everyone thought they would do, that leap from, Super Mario World to Mario 64. Do that with Shovel Knight, that'll be awesome. However, it does seem like they have a bit of rougher terrain to navigate between now and then, and shout out to Mina the Hollower. Just get that thing on more people's radars, go check out the demo, see what you think. I'll put some footage in the YouTube version of this. because the game looks awesome. It's like a throwback to old school Game Boy Color RPGs, but done with a lot more modern coding techniques to speed everything up, make attacks a lot more snappier, and the music is just awesome. Like, Yacht Club make heavenly games, and I truly, truly hope and pray that they are around for a lot longer than just the next few years. Next up, the game spotlight, and I want to spotlight one of the most overlooked titles of the year, something that I started months ago, and you can watch my initial playthrough as I did the first hour. It was just when I was starting the channel, actually. Cronos: The New Dawn. I absolutely loved my time in the first hour of the game, but I didn't, I just didn't have the time to go back to it. There was always something else that was dropping. There was always something else that took my focus away, and so when I went back to it very recently, I ended up restarting, and it is from Bloober Team, the dudes that just did Silent Hill 2. I feel like they are kind of the name in horror games right now, and I love the idea that they are able to do a Silent Hill and then break away and go, hey, we're going to do a new IP alongside, because they are one of the only studios specifically doing the throwback Resident Evil 4 style gameplay. In terms of, you're running away from enemies, you're trying to kite them around corners, you're playing the angles game when you're taking on multiple enemies at once. You're doing that, let me stand my ground and take on a bunch of enemies all at once kind of thing. And Cronos has insane ammo conservation. Like, they only give you 5 bullets per encounter, so you need to make sure that every single hit counts. There's a charge mechanic in terms of making sure that you're charging the gun and letting it off at the right time. But Cronos' overall setup as well is this really cool dissection of socialism in 1980s Poland. And so it's done through a post-apocalyptic, it's clearly a piece of COVID art. I feel like we had so many pieces of COVID art coming out of lockdown with, various different creatives ruminating on that idea of lockdown, that idea of society stopping, how much self-reflection we kind of all did, how many different things that we missed during the lockdown. The gameplay side of things is extremely weighty, old school survival horror, over-shoulder shooting, with awesome enemy mechanics as well, where the enemies will consume each other as you investigate this weird post-apocalyptic quarantine zone version of Poland, jumping back and forward through time to find out what happened back in the day. Take a little dose of a little taste of the Stranger Things upside down and mix it with Resident Evil 4 gameplay, and you're not that far off Cronos: The New Dawn. Next, the overlooked games of the week, and I want to throw one of my own in, which is currently on PlayStation Plus. From 2022, it is Neon White, a super cool arcadey first-person shooter where you're dealing with different combat challenges. It's super, super snappy, and competing with your own friends list, also competing with global leaderboards, trying to nail different times as you get through these different challenges. You start with a standard pistol, but you shoot different cards in the environment to unlock different guns, which then have extremely limited ammo, but you are then linking those specific guns to specific enemies. So all of a sudden you're thinking, you get through one of the levels, you get used to where the enemy placement is, where the cards are, where you want to go, how you want to path your way through the level, and then it's like, okay, I can tighten that up. Give me one more chance. It's that perfect one more go kind of game, with a really, really cool soundtrack as well. I find I've become a meme. I mention soundtracks alongside every single game, but maybe that just speaks to the caliber of music in the gaming industry right now, or the last few years, where almost every game has a killer soundtrack alongside it. One of the coolest things that they do is find a way to do this time trial gauntlet style gameplay, but mixed with boss fights. So you are chasing enemies through these really tight levels, navigating corridors, doing double jumps, zipping through the air, swapping different weapons, nailing weak points as everybody moves around you. It's just such a cool game. If you've seen it pop up on your PlayStation Plus and wondered what it is, if you already have that subscription, just give this a go and let me know what you think down in the comments. Jumping in super quick here to say that if you like positive gaming news every single week, please subscribe to the channel. Please like this video. It does help in regards to the YouTube algorithm. And if you would like the bigger Just Good Game show, which the Just Good Game news is part of, you can head over to patreon.com/Tailford to get that early access, or you can just subscribe on the free feeds. It's always available on a Saturday after coming out early on a Wednesday anyway. So if you'd like to listen on your Spotify's or anywhere else that you get your podcasts, the Just Good Game show is on there a few days later. Thank you so much for watching though, and on with the show. Next recommendation is from Joey Grimm on YouTube, who says Unholy War on PlayStation 1 by Toys for Bob. Of all the games that need to just be thrown on the PlayStation Plus or the backwards compatible service, or get, Night Dive or some retro studio, get Atari and their publishing wing of retro studios to pick up Unholy War from the depths and just put it out again, because this was such a sick game. I remember the character designs. Basically, it was a melee-based arena brawler where you were playing as these effed up different monsters with different power-ups and different abilities. Some of them could fly, some of them had different range moves, some of them had brutal melee, and I feel like you just threw them against each other. I only really played the multiplayer, so I remember playing it with one of my friends back in the day. I think we were only 10 10 years old or something. But I have such a fond memory of Unholy War. And shout out to Peter Austin as well, who, when me and him started working together at What Culture way back in 2016, 2017, we both stumbled upon like a screenshot or something of Unholy War, or I was describing it and he was like, that's what that is. And we just were like, oh my God, you know what that game is too. Last overlooked game is from Clay James 01 on the Discord, who mentions Time Flies, which is such a cool game. I've only been playing this for the last couple of days and it's going to sound like nothing at all. But you literally play as a fly and the whole idea is that you only have 80 seconds to survive. However, as I'm describing this, you know, when you describe a game and you're very aware that the average person's going to be going like, yeah, all right, mate, yeah. But you play as a little fly and you're flying around, you're trying to do as much stuff as you can in your given life. Now, your life is determined by which country you choose to be from, because the game pulls information from the World Health Organization in regards to the average lifespan of a fly. So if you're playing in the UK, you have 80 seconds of game time. If you go somewhere else, I think the US is like 74 seconds or whatever, which is such a fun statistic to go to different countries and be like, how long does a fly last in different countries? The game gives you a bucket list of things to do in your 80-second time limit. You can extend it by flying into different clocks that are around this dude's house that you're in, but you're also just trying to complete really simple tasks, like you're trying to hoover up some coins that are inside a lamp without bumping into the light itself and killing yourself. You're trying to get drunk for the first time, so you're flying into like a little drop of wine that's been left next to a glass. You're trying to make someone laugh for the first time, so you can fly up to the dude's feet who's asleep upstairs and tickle his feet by running around on them. Easily one of the most unique games ever made, and even quadruply easily one of the most overlooked games of 2025. Next up, 3 game deals and 3 game deals. And you know what I'm saying, and I want to talk about Immortals Fenyx Rising. We talk about overlooked games, we talk about different games that weren't appreciated in their time. Immortals Fenyx Rising was easy to overlook, and it was very off-putting in regards to its writing. Well, I talked about the PlayStation version of the game as well. It's on sale for £6.99 until the 22nd of December. It was basically the Assassin's Creed Origins team put on a separate IP, but there's a lot of that Assassin's Creed late 2010s reboot energy is in Immortals Fenyx Rising. However, the gameplay is what sings. Like, gameplay is king, as I say regularly, and this game has such cool physics to it overall. The combat is incredibly crunchy and meaty. You are launching enemies just way off into the sky, like Team Rocket style, as they fly off into the clouds. Alongside some really great boss battles, there is this really good weight to everything, leading to, clearly the developers were inspired by Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, that idea of having a handful of different physics-based puzzles all around the open world, and because the physics are on point, you get to do all of these really cool physics-based puzzle solutions, like launching cannonballs through crates to scatter them, to smash them, to open up the environment, to get to the next place. The story side of things, the writing, it tries to be funny. It's really not in many places, but it is worth a play. It is something that I would heartily recommend on a pure playability level, and no one ever believes me because of how the game looks and the reputation that it has, but it does play extremely well, as I'm sure people in the comments on YouTube will back me up on. Next recommendation is Unpacking, also on PlayStation and also on sale until the 22nd of December for £6.39. A game like Time Flies where you look at it, you go, there's no way that is anything. But Unpacking is literally about unpacking your belongings into different environments. However, the thing that sneaks up on you as you play through it is how well told and how relatable, the story is of our own times unpacking different parts of our lives into different locations as we grow up. Like the different items that you have when you're living with your parents. Maybe you move out for the first time. Maybe you move in with someone for the first time. And you don't necessarily think about that until, like in the real world, if you're going back through your belongings and you pick up a certain item that you haven't seen for like 15 years, and all of a sudden you have those flashback memories of like, oh man, me and my mum used to play with this, or me and my dad used to do this, or me and my sister, me and my best friend used to love this thing, or whatever it is. I find that Unpacking is that general approach to sentimentality codified and made playable. And I know that this is, the complete opposite of what someone who is looking forward to the next God of War from the video game awards might be after. But every now and then, I just want to shout out games that do unique things extremely well, and certain titles that give you experiences and give you feelings that are so unique to video games, and Unpacking is easily one of them. An extremely touching game where, like I said, there's more to it than just unpacking different items. They mean things, and the locations mean something, and when you realize what's happening in regards to, you can piece together the relationship between these items and between these locations, it's a really, really special game. Lastly, Assassin's Creed Unity is also on sale till the 22nd for £3.60. 1974. Assassin's Creed Unity has gone on to be, you know, a cult classic, one of the most recommendable titles in the Assassin's Creed franchise overall, and marks one of the last times that they would do a traditional Assassin's Creed, where you're not just walking into waves of enemies taking on 50 dudes at once. And yes, you can point to Assassin's Creed 2, and the Ezio trilogy is steering into that as well, but AC Unity is way more about stealth. It's way more about hiding places. It's way more about assassinating someone by methodically going through an environment. It's one of the only Assassin's Creeds that has Hitman-style signature kills for the enemies as well. It looks absolutely gorgeous. And also, I really love Arnaud Dorian and Elise as the main characters. I think they're a really good romantic couple, and I think the chemistry between the actors really comes through. Assassin's Creed Unity, as much as it was easily hated for, you know, over a decade now, is worth playing in 2025. Next up, the return of tips and tricks. I have to wait until I have something to share with you where I think, oh, that's cool. And as I was finishing up Ghost of Yotei for the Game of the Year conversations, Sucker Punch dropped a massive update for the game. It was right in the middle as I was playing. However, they've not really shouted about how substantial this thing is, and you might have missed it. If you've been waiting to go back to Ghost of Yotei, if you've not played it just yet at all, the new graphics options in the game really take things to the next level. They've added, you know, modular versions of the ray tracing mode, so you can play on like a balanced ray tracing mode. It's like what Insomniac did to the Spider-Man games in Miles Morales and the Spider-Man remaster, trying to give you the best of both worlds, because clearly these teams are still, you know, optimizing the game post-launch, and thankfully they've passed those fruits of that labor onto us, because I have a statement from Digital Foundry's analysis saying that looking at Ghost of Yotei on base PlayStation 5, the new balanced ray tracing mode is that console's first option to reach a locked 40 FPS target, though like all other modes now, it can be unlocked on VRR compatible 120Hz panels to hover in its own tasteful 40 to 60 FPS range. It only took 2 months for Sucker Punch to offer a ray tracing mode on base PlayStation 5 that reaches spitting distance of the launch code's 60 FPS's refresh on PlayStation 5 Pro. Great stuff for anyone enjoying Yotei on the non-PS5 Pro. If you need a translation for the way Digital Foundry talk, ostensibly this mode on base PS5 is like what we used to have on the PlayStation 5 Pro, and it looks absolutely gorgeous. I'm lucky enough to have an LG CX, so I had the VRR mode turned on, just put it on smooth so it tries to maintain the frame rate, and then turn on the balanced ray tracing mode. So for me, it was running at about 40 frames a second, sometimes a little bit higher, but with the ray tracing turned on. Ghost of Yotei looks absolutely gorgeous with its ray tracing turned on, and I'm never a ray tracing ride or die kind of guy, but in this particular game, it is a notable difference when it's on or off. The tip and trick side of this comes from me realizing that they've added the ability to change the graphics modes inside the photo mode, which is so cool. Like, you can go into the dynamic photo mode whenever you want. You just tap right on the D-pad. In Ghost of Yotei, you can go into there's a bunch of different options that you can change, as you usually can in photo modes, like different filters and things like that. But they've added it so you can toggle you can toggle ray tracing on or off in the photo mode. So if you want to just, you want to play with maximum frame rate during gameplay, then you want to pause and take a really beautiful shot of a sunset or whatever it is with the best lighting conditions possible, you can do that in the photo mode. More devs / all companies need to do this. It's such a great way to show off what these different modes can do. Lastly, some trivia, and by the next time I see you, this time next week, Metroid Prime 4 will finally be out, which feels insane to say. Like, the fact that we got the teaser for that at the beginning of the Nintendo Switch 1 generation 8 years ago is kind of terrifying. However, I thought I'd do a little bit of Metroid Prime trivia, mainly just because that game's development has been rocky as hell, if you hadn't already guessed, but there are some specifics behind the scenes. And so, one, it's insane to realize that it's been 18 years since Metroid Prime 3 Corruption, with Metroid Prime 4 being a development across the late 2010s, and then Nintendo deciding to restart the entire project and move the game's producer, Kensuke Tanabe, over to Retro Studios. He was one of the only staff members that crossed back over. And like I said, the entire Switch generation passed, with Nintendo now saying that Metroid Prime 4 is apparently a new story geared towards newcomers, as a way to get the biggest new audience in possible. That's my inference on the latter part. I just think it's kind of fascinating that they haven't said that until a couple of weeks before launch. We did also have, Jeff Grubb, a notable leaker, saying multiple times that Metroid Prime 2 and 3 remasters were coming back in 2023, but that obviously never happened. So you would think that Nintendo would have prepped more people for the continuation of Prime, unless this idea of it being, the next next new installment for newcomers is just the way to go. And so they don't want to confuse people by, you know, invoking the idea, oh, you should play through the Prime Remaster and then play 2 and 3. Considering the development hell, the different, the back and forwards they've had, rebooting the game entirely and shifting the staff around, I just hope that it lands for the fans and all of us who have been waiting for the better part of a decade. And that has been the Just Good Game News. Thank you so much for watching. And again, if you like this kind of thing, please subscribe, like the video, head over to Patreon if you would like it even earlier in a bigger version of the show. I cannot thank you enough, and I love putting this stuff together every single week. So hopefully you enjoy your weekend. Hopefully you're enjoying going back through your backlogs and going into the December Christmas period. I know I am, as I try and find all sorts of woolens to keep myself warm. Take care of yourselves. I might see you on Patreon or Discord, and if not, I will see you next week. As for right now, we are going to shout out everybody who is on the top tier of Patreon, all of the helping heroes who I cannot do this without. Dun 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 dun. One man gets way too excited in a small room waiting for Metroid Prime 4. Anyway, let's do some shout outs in a random order. Shout outs to Nova John, Evil Wabbit, Soul, Tony Gilbert, Stephen Fox, Shono Byrne, Robert Mainprize, Nathan Ellis, Ray Montano, Null, Habit, Lucky Boy Plays Games, VK's Game Time, Hunter Ferguson, and Alex Semenchuk. Once again, thank you all so much, and I'll probably catch you guys on the Discord, the Patreon. If not, I'll see you next week, but thank you so much, and take care.